There are a couple of Trump clips that I would like to play here that he has said over the last few days. Um, you know, he's doing this thing now where he is calling Kamala Harris stupid and that she has, mental issues. In fact, let's just play the clip. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way.
He was originally talking about Joe Biden.
She was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
The funniest part about this is, see, I think there was times where we would listen to it. I should say I would listen to this and I'd be like, this motherfucker, you're just so angry about the things that he says and how he says it. And now it's just more of Kamala Harris in that last debate broke his brain so badly that he is really struggling with how awful he did and how everybody, for the most part, unless you're in the MAGA bubble, how everybody is saying that was an ass beating of epic proportions, some calling it the greatest debate performance of all time. And that broke his small little brain so badly that now every time he goes out into these rallies, it's kind of, what she did to him during that debate. She would say things like, go to his rallies, they're boring, people are leaving. And instead of sticking on topic, that drove him so insanely crazy that that's all he focused on now on the answer. So the same thing is happening during these rallies. He can only focus on the fact that he got beaten so badly in this debate that it's going to be Kamala is stupid. Kamala was born with mental deficiencies, and this is going to be him up until election. But the problem is, this is going to get him no new voters. These are just going to get the people. You could even hear the people in the crowd. You hear cheering in the background, but just didn't have the same gusto that the old rallies did. It just didn't sound like the people were into it as much. In fact, this next clip, he's calling her stupid again, and the crowd, for some bizarre reason, at the end starts chanting, lock her up, lock her up. But listen to the lock her up chant. Again, it's not the same old 2016 MAGA crowd that I'm hearing in 2024. They just didn't sound that into it.
This is what we're bringing. But we're bringing them in at levels that nobody's ever seen, and we're doing it by stupid people like Kamala. She's a stupid person.
Again, too, the doing it at levels like nobody's ever seen. He says this about everything. Seriously, well, look at the MAGA people in the background. They are bored. And Kamala Harris is exactly right. They get up and they leave out of boredom because they're like, oh no, another thing that I've never seen before, which is something I've seen a billion times. I don't even know what he's talking about here, but anyway, he's already talked about how stupid she is, and the lock her up chant, the bizarre, nonsensical lock her up chant is coming up. And again, just listen, it doesn't have the same power.
Stupid person. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, that was pretty weak. I mean, they're not even out of their chairs. You saw one guy try to stand up and get them all into it, and they're like, lock her up, lock her up. And they were out of sync with the lock her up. I mean, back in the 2016 MAGA days, I mean, they were on it. I mean, lock her up. They were cheering. Fists were in the air. Faces all red. Just kind of a mosh pit, it felt like, inside there. That place felt angry. That felt like WWE Raw, taping back in the day when The Rock and Stone Cold were there and everybody's on fire. This one, there's kind of like, locker up. Okay, yeah, let's screw it. Let's do the locker up thing, I guess. But this is him also, too, calling for one day of violence. And what he's referring to is that he's brought this up before, is that when you go into a store in California, that if somebody steals something up to $900, it is considered a misdemeanor. That anything over $900 is no longer a misdemeanor. But he is alluding to the fact that Californians just allow people to go into these stores and just to steal stuff up to $900 and just to let it go. That, again, is not the case. All it is that you can steal up to $900 worth of stuff and you'll be charged with a misdemeanor and not a felony. In fact, got an interesting little statistic about a couple of other states that have these same laws in their states. But let's listen to Donald Trump talk to the crowd about what could happen on these days that would wipe all of this out.
950 is a misnomer because you can steal whatever you want. You can go way above. But you'd see, originally, you saw kids walk in with calculators. They were calculating. They didn't want to go over the $950. They're standing with calculators, adding it up. You know, these are smart people. They're not so stupid, but they have to be taught. Now, if you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge, Congressman Kelly, put him in charge for one day. Mike, would you say, he's right here, he's a great congressman. Would you say, Mike, that if you were in charge, you would say, oh, please, don't touch them, don't touch them, let them rob your store. All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent, the city doesn't have money. It's a chain of events that's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out, and it will end immediately. End immediately. You know, it'll end immediately.
Yeah, well, so Mike Kelly, that's there in the audience, or Max Kelly, whatever his name was, he's one of the congressmen there. What he probably knows and what Donald Trump did not know is that in the state that he was doing that rally in Pennsylvania, it's up to $2,000 where it becomes a misdemeanor, where in California it's $900. So the rules and the law in California is actually more strict than it is in Pennsylvania. And the congressperson that he's pointing at, also in the state of Texas, big bad Texas, where they don't put up with shit there, and the law is the law, and if you break the law, we're coming to get you. It's $2,500 in Texas. So it's actually more in Pennsylvania, and it's more in Texas for the misdemeanor to no longer be a misdemeanor than it is in California. So, you know, again, this is kind of important stuff that you should know before you go around and spread this nonsense and listen to a lifelong grifter, liar, who has always lied to every single person that he's ever come in contact with, but still believing them is insane. But here's one thing you absolutely can believe Donald Trump saying. This is what he had to say when he had to pay overtime to people in his crowd who probably need overtime.
Don't give. I know a lot about overtime. I'd hated to give overtime. I hated it. I'd get other people. I shouldn't say this, but I'd get other people in. I wouldn't pay. I hated.
Look at the
this
crowd
is
in the
going to
back.
lead to a lot.
I mean, he's telling them to their face, I don't like paying overtime. And guess what? Project 2025 doesn't like paying overtime either. There are stipulations in Project 2025 to get rid of overtime, to get rid of extra pay for the worker. This whole administration is trying to set up for the owners and not for the workers. And the fact that the workers who would vote for this guy, who do not take the time to realize this, is so mind-blowingly insane to me. I will never understand it. People always say, I brought this up before, the MSNBC and CNN, where are you getting your news? You're just saying it because you hate Trump. They have a document that they laid out. It's 900 pages long. You can read it yourself if you want to. You're not going to, but you can read it yourself and see that everything in this document that they want to lay out for the next administration, which in this case obviously is Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump's name is mentioned over 300 times in Project 2025. Over 300 times, Donald Trump's name has been mentioned in Project 2025. So, if you do really care, at least skim through it, maybe read a chapter or two, pick go through the index and look at the chapters and see which ones would spark your interest the most, and maybe start reading it and get a sense of what Project 2025 is and what it will do and what it wants to do. And maybe you can educate yourself a little bit more than just listening to this clown who continues to lie over and over and over again to your face in these rallies, outside of him saying, I don't like paying overtime. And in fact, neither do my owner friends. And if I have my way, we're not going to pay overtime either. And what else I'm going to do is I'm going to put tariffs on everything across the board coming into this country. And it's going to raise your taxes. It's going to raise the price of goods here, and the inflation is going to go up. I know that you're going to believe me instead of the economic experts that are telling you this, because I'm just going to say that the economic experts are rhinos, or they're from CNN or MSNBC. And I've got this locked in already. I've got you people programmed to believe that if I could just tell you that the source of this is from something that I've already programmed you into not believing, then I got you, But again, I've said before, you need more voters. You need new voters. And how you're going to get new voters by telling them you don't like paying overtime, best of luck, pal. And I told you before, I will say this, I feel more and more confident. Kamala Harris is going to win this election. She's going to win big. There's not going to be a next day, 2 days, a week later kind of thing to figure out who won. We'll probably know by no later than 11 o'clock p.m. that night. So I feel pretty confident in that up to this point. If something changes from now until November 5th, then maybe I'll reassess. But as of right now, I believe she's going to win. I think she's going to win big.